Happy Mother's Day. You will have by now seen that you will have received a special bread cloak, and this is what you're going to be using to make sourdough bread. So today I want to give you I'm making you a little video because since due to the coronavirus we're not able to have a little cooking session today, so I just wanted to give you a little tutorial to get you started. Of course, you can always call me with any questions. So you will have, after you opened your present today, you will have received your bread pan or cloak. You will have received a baton, which is a special basket which you'll use for your second rising of the sourdough bread. But I'm going to walk you through all the steps. I will have provided you with the starter. This particular starter is a 150-year-old San Francisco starter that I purchased, and you will have to take care of it like a little baby, feeding it at least once a week. If you have it in the refrigerator, which you can do and just make bread once a week, but if you really get into the bread making and want to make it every day, you can leave it on the counter. And when you feed it, you're going to feed it about 3/4 of a cup of all-purpose flour and about 3/4 of a cup of water, lukewarm water. You're going to want it to be kind of like a pancake mixture, not a real thick pancake mixture, but like a pancake. And as you can see, I fed this one this morning, so you can see it's already got some little bubbles in it, and that's the wild yeast, and if you smell it, it smells kind of sour. That's why they call it sourdough bread. So this is it. If you happen to kill your sourdough starter by chance, which is very difficult to do, let me know, because I always have more where this came from. So actually the settlers used to carry their sourdough starter across the country in their covered wagons, so it's not as fragile as people make it sound. Some people will tell you to measure everything to the grams. I just measure. I'll do 3/4 of a cup of flour, 3/4 of a cup of water. And as I said, I feed it once a day, unless it's in the refrigerator, and then I feed it once a month, or once a week. I usually keep mine in a bigger jar, and you're going to find the jar that I give it to you in is not going to be big enough because if it starts growing. So here it is. And when you do feed it, if you haven't made sourdough, you're going to have to do what they call discard some, because you only want to start with this much or a little bit less when you're feeding it, because otherwise it just gets to be too much. So I keep a separate container where I'll put like stuff I haven't used if I'm not making bread that day in it, and you can use it for different things. Like I just made crackers, you could make pancakes, waffles. There's lots of recipes. It's called the discard sourdough. So here we go. We're going to start to make a loaf. So I'm going to show you how we go about doing this. You're going to have just any kind of bowl, and you're going to start with 3/4 of a cup of the starter, and they'll say in the recipe fed starter. So I fed this morning, so now it just means it's ready to use. So I'm going to start by putting the sourdough starter in my bowl. Then I'm going to add 1 1/4 cups of warm water. So lukewarm water, kind of like bath water. Just pour that in. And then next you're going to use, and this is terrible, you can tell that I'm definitely a bread maker because I have the big old pots of the flour, which you'll find I'm also giving you a 25-pound bag of bread flour. So I'm anticipating that you're going to enjoy doing it. So I'm going to add to this, I'm going to put 3.5 cups for this recipe. And the recipe I'm using is one that's called a non-knead recipe. So you're not going to have to knead it as you would like a typical bread where you have to knead it for like 10-15 minutes, but you will do a little bit of work with it. So 3.5 cups of bread flour, and then I'm going to go ahead and give it 1 teaspoon of salt. So it's a pretty basic recipe. Whoopsie doopsie, I almost went too much there. So 1 teaspoon. Okay, so you see I have it in here. I'm going to mix it up, and it's going to be a little bit raggy looking, I'll call it, at first. So I'm going to mix it. It's going to be a little bit sticky, but just mix it up a little bit. And then I'm going to set it aside for about 10 minutes. And then I'll come back to it, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with it then. A few minutes, Devin. And as you're going to see now, I'm going to take it out here a little bit, put a little extra flour, and I just used some all-purpose flour, just because it is going to be a little sticky. You don't want to, you're going to leave it be a little bit sticky. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of stretch it, and then I'm going to fold it into itself. It is still a little bit too wet, so I'm going to put a little bit more. Just a little bit to handle it. And we're going to, instead of kneading, we're stretching it. And this is what's going to create the pockets in your bread later and give it a good crumb, as they call it. Okay, so I'm going to now, did that a little bit. I'll come back and I'll do that a couple times more while it's rising. This bread, or this dough now, you're going to let it sit. It's going to take very little attendance. You're going to cover it with some plastic wrap and just set it aside for about 8 hours. It can be up to 12 hours, just to let it kind of rise and work. Usually what I'll do is I'll come back probably 2 times, you know, just as I think about it. And then I'm going to show you what I do with it. I have some here that I started this morning. So you can see this is what it looks like after it's been rising for quite a while. And if you look closely, you're going to be able to see some little bubbles in here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a little flour on my hand, and I'm going to take this dough out. Oh, there, you can see, look at that bubble. So this is ready. This is going to be ready to do. So what I'm going to do now, you can see it's very elastic now. So I'm going to stretch it and fold it. Oh, there, look at that bubble. I love that bubble. Oh, there's another bubble. This is going to be great bread. It feels really soft. You know, if it's too sticky, just put a little bit, but you don't want to put too much flour in it. So I'm going to stretch it in each direction, fold it over itself, you know, several times, not a huge amount, but some, probably, you know, each direction at least 4 or 5 times. And just kind of fold it. And then what I'm going to do now is, okay, I've got it shaped into a nice little ball. I'm going to set it down for a second. And here's the bread basket that you're going to use to let your bread rise the second time. So I'm going to make sure I flour it pretty good. If by chance you were going to make it and you didn't have your special basket with you, you could take a tea towel, just like the muslin type of cloth, and put it in any kind of a basket or put it in a bowl, something that looks like it's going to be the shape of a loaf of bread. So here I go. I'm going to do this. I'm going to take that loaf that feels super good. This is going to be a great loaf. I'm going to set it into the basket that's been floured. I'm going to put a tiny bit more flour on top. Now I'm going to cover this up, and I'm going to let this set for 2 hours. Okay, and let me show you what I'm going to do next. You're going to just set that aside. A lot of times what I do when I'm going to make bread is I'm either going to start early in the morning, because as you can see, it's a long process. You're letting it rise, you know, 8, maybe up to 12 hours. And then you're going to let it rise another 2 hours. So you kind of have to really time it. It's not a quick thing, but believe me, it's well worth the wait. Okay, Devin, it's been an hour now. My bread's been rising in the basket for an hour. Still has another hour. But now what I need to do is I need to take my bread pan and I need to put it in the oven, because that's the part of what's really going to help make this sourdough bread pop up, and your special pan will create in it the steam that makes the crust and everything. So actually, if you didn't have this special pan, you could use like a cast iron, an enameled cast iron pot, which I've used before too. But let me just say, every loaf that I've made in this pan has come out perfect, and you have this exact same pan. that you've just opened this morning. So you're gonna put this in the oven at 450 degrees. So it's a really hot oven. So you're gonna put the pot in, make sure, don't preheat the oven. Put this in, then turn your oven on to 450. You're gonna wait between 45 minutes and an hour, and then you're going to put your bread in here, but we'll come back and I'm gonna show you how to do that as well. But right now, an hour after I put my bread in my basket, I'm gonna put this in the oven an hour before I'm gonna bake the bread. Okay, I'll see you in an hour, Devin. Hi, Devin, I'm back again. Okay, it's been 2 hours since we put the bread in its special bread basket to rise. So it's been rising for 2 hours. And as you recall, we put the bread pan in the oven at 450 degrees an hour ago. Actually, I sometimes will put it at convection and turn it just a tiny bit lower, but close to 450, almost 450. So let's check this out. Oh, look here. You can see lots of little bubbles. So we're getting a good little rise here. Now we're going to have a couple of options when we put it in the oven, and one of the options is going to be that we can score it. I have a special little blade here for doing that. You can use a razor blade, but this makes it a little bit easier. Sometimes if you do a little scoring on the bread, it'll help when it pops. It'll pop where you want it to. Sometimes I just let it go and let it pop wherever it wants to. So today, well, I'm not sure quite. I'm going to wait till I put it onto the pan and make a decision at that point. So here we go. I'm going to pull it out. It's really hot because it's been in here for a long time. So I'm going to move this down for a second. Now what you do here too in this pan is you're just going to sprinkle some flour. You could put cornmeal if you wanted. If I was using the cast iron and not enamel pan, I would probably line it with the parchment. I would use the parchment paper down. But this, especially when I use the basket, I'm going to just turn it right over onto here. Oops. A little bit of stickage going on here. But we'll put it in like this because it's going to have a nice little design on it, as you can see. I'll put a little scoring on here just to help it where we want it to pop. Some people get really fancy with their designs. I'm not there. So I'll move it over just a tiny bit more in the center because I'm going to put the lid on and it'll... Okay, we're going to come back now. We'll probably come check it in about a half an hour, 35 minutes, just to see how it's doing. Depending on your oven, it might bake a little bit different. When we're up in our cabin in the high elevation, it usually pops a little faster and cooks a little faster. But we'll check this in about half hour, 35 minutes, and so see you then. Okay, I'm back again, Devin. We have the bread that's been in the pan, in the oven for the last, about, I think 35 minutes. So I'm gonna just take it out, or open it up and check it, see how we're doing. Ooh, this is always exciting. Oh, isn't that looking pretty? Oh my gosh, isn't that a beautiful loaf? Let me check. You know, the one thing I recommend doing until you're really feeling confident about the bread is I like to check the temperature. You're gonna look to see the bread should get to, oh, it's over 200, so it should be done, but I think I want to brown it a little bit more, so I'm going to leave it uncovered for about the next 5 minutes or so, and then we'll come back and check it. But doesn't that look beautiful? It rose up beautifully. Oh my goodness, so pretty, so pretty. Okay, let's just give it 5 minutes, and then I think we're going to have a loaf of bread. Easy as that.